In this video, I'm going to introduce you to the 3D workspace and show you some of the tools and features that we'll be using to turn our linking member into a 3D object. To move from the 2D workspace to the 3D workspace, you want to begin by hitting Finish Sketch up here. Our object is still 2D, however. To make our object 3D, we are going to use the Extrude tool. So the Extrude button is up here next to the other features which you use to turn a 2D object into 3D. So let's hit Extrude. And then this pop-up box will show up here. So we want to select our profiles. So if we click here, this will select everything that we want. So let's hit that. And then that will immediately jump up 10 millimeters as that's the default. But I think for our member, we want something nice and small. So let's go with 2 millimeters. Now you'll see that this is moving upward from the surface that we originally had. You can drag the arrow to change this and you can move that in real time. But we want to be nice and precise. So again, let's leave it with 2 mils. You can also change the direction which this extrusion comes from. You can also do symmetrically and even asymmetrically too, where you have different distances in each direction. This is only really useful once you have a more complex part though, so we're just going to stick with symmetric as that is best practice. So let's hit OK. Now I'm going to show you how to manipulate your workspace. So one of the best ways to manipulate your workspace is to use the view cube here in the top right corner. You can immediately click to move to any angle shown on the view cube. And you can also click the home button to get back to the original view that you had. This is also useful if you happen to look away too far and it will move you back to the beginning. The way you zoom in and out is by using the scroll wheel, but it's reversed to what you're probably used to. Also, if you click down the middle mouse button, you can pan around the screen the way I'm doing now. If you hold Shift and press the middle mouse button, you can rotate just how I'm doing now. This free rotation does not put you to exact angles as it does with the view cube, so just be aware of that. Now I'll show you some of the cool features that you can use in the 3D workspace to manipulate the object which you have extruded. I'll start by showing you the material and appearance properties. So that's right at the top above the normal toolbar. You have these two drop-down boxes. The first is the material and the second is the appearance. If you hover over here, it will show an additional tooltip which details what the tool does. The material drop-down will change your material properties as well. So that means when you're doing a stress analysis, for example, your part will assume the mass properties of the material you choose or the tensile properties of the material that you choose. Whereas the appearance purely just changes the look of the material. However, the material drop-down also changes the look too. So let's go with PET. Silver. But now let's change the appearance. Smooth red, that looks good, I think. So for our linking member, we want to have a screw fit through here and connect it to another part of the arm or another linking member. But if we had a screw and we wanted it to sit flush with the rest of the member, we would need to countersink the screw head. The way that we do that in Inventor is by using the Chamfer tool here. It works quite similarly to the fillet tool, as in you just click your edge and it will chamfer it down. In this case, it's much too high, so let's drop that down, 0.5. That looks more reasonable. So this is just the distance. You can also change the way that this is calculated by looking at the angle and the distance, or two distances. So let's just stick with the default distances and we'll hit apply there. Actually, we'll do that to both of our screw holes. There we go. We also have the fillet tool, which works exactly the same as it does in the 2D sketching. So we just use the fillet tool and we'll change that radius to, let's go 0.5 millimeters. And then we can click on our edges like this. You click on multiple edges at a time, hit apply, and there we go. We now have a nice rounded member. So now I'll show you how to add text onto your object. So let's begin by creating a 2D sketch on the front surface where you want to add your text. Then we're going to use the text tool, and we're just going to click that anywhere on the screen just to get the text pop-up started. So our text needs to be a size which fits in between the two fillets. So we know that the actual width of the member is 3 millimeters. So let's go for about 1 millimeter of text. I know that will definitely fit in. So now I'm going to type yukimazu. That's good. So you'll notice that that's 90 degrees off in rotation. So let's use the rotate tool to rotate that. So we'll click on yukimazu. Center point, just select anywhere. It doesn't really matter because we're not constraining it yet. And then we're going to just make sure that we type 90 degrees and hit enter. There we go. All right, so now we want to position this exactly in the center. So let's use our center lines, and we'll create a center line. The height does matter for this one, and the reason being is because our second center line needs to be in the middle because we want a nice even split. All right, that's a good start. Now let's go dimension. So if we dimension this way, we'll see that we have 1.284. So let's just leave that dimension there, and this way 5.379. Okay. So next up, we're going to position the text in the middle of the member. So let's put it roughly in the right place to begin with. That looks about in the middle to me of the two center lines. And now we're going to use the dimension tool, and we're going to click on one side and then onto the center line. So this will give us a diameter dimension, and we just want to set that to be the same as your value here. So I'm going to set mine to 5.379, and that puts us nice and in the middle there. And then we're just going to repeat the same thing with the top of the text and the middle center line. So ours is going to be 1.284. There we go, and now we're squarely in the middle. Just a quick note, you have to roughly position the text in the middle, because if you were to just do the dimensions straight away and your text was off-centered, it might set the distance from the text to the center line by your diameter rather than setting it to be equidistant from the center line. So now let's hit finish sketch, and we'll convert it into a 3D text rather than just a 2D object on our member, as this won't 3D print. So to do that, we use the Emboss tool. So there are two options that we can use with this tool. We can either emboss or engrave. So let me set this depth to something more reasonable, seeing as we're working with a 2 millimeter wide member. Let's go with 0.2 millimeters. And now the profile, we select our text and hit OK. And there you go. You can see that that embosses the text and it raises it up. So that looks pretty good actually. But I will just show you I'll double click on this feature here, and I'll change that to the engrave, and that's what the engrave looks like. So I think I'll stick with the engrave just so it's nice and flush, just in case that this member were to be flush against any other objects. So that is how you put 3D text onto your objects.